Hey everyone, Dreki here, and today I'm reviewing the Akaso V50x. This is a real 4K action cam that has image stabilization at 4K and costs under $100. That $100 price point is a bit of a tough one though, because it's generally where manufacturers start to make big sacrifices in order to meet a cheap price. So let's talk about what the V50x does right, and whether or not it's a good camera. Spoiler alert, it is pretty good overall, but there are a few things that might be a deal breaker for you. If you're trying to decide between the V50x and the V50 Pro, I'd honestly recommend going for the Pro instead. Akaso generally includes a good bunch of accessories with their cams, and notably this one comes with 2 batteries and an external charger, which is a nice touch. Let's start off this review with build quality. The V50x is that older action cam style, meaning it's not waterproof unless you use an external case. The camera body itself is made with soft touch plastic that feels sort of middle of the road in terms of quality. That being said, everything is pretty solid overall, and there's no creaks or flexing when I squeeze the camera. This camera has buttons on the top, front, and side, and around the back of the camera is a large touchscreen. It's not the highest resolution ever, but it does get the job done, and it's bright enough to be visible in daylight. And this is a good segue into my favorite part of this camera, the user interface. Not only does the camera have buttons and a touchscreen to navigate the UI, the whole thing is very thoughtfully laid out with clever tricks like fast access to settings by pressing and holding the shutter button. That means changing resolutions on the fly is only a click away. I'm very appreciative of buttons when most cameras are doing away with them. In the wet or when wearing gloves, touchscreens just don't function, so having that option of touch or buttons is almost revolutionary. What's more, this user interface is fast, smooth, and easy to understand. So overall, just because the user interface is so straightforward, I think that this camera would be very good for a beginner. Let's look at video quality, and we'll start with 4K 30 frames per second. If you do buy this camera, stick to this resolution. 4K 30 has image stabilization, and that image stabilization is quite good in most situations. We'll talk more on that a little bit later. For now, let's look at the technical qualities of the 4K. First of all, it is real 4K. There is tons of detail. There's a little bit of noise in daylight. Colors are bright. Contrast is high. And if you don't like the way the video is, too bad, because there's really no way to tweak contrast or saturation. To be honest though, in this resolution, for the most part I found myself extremely satisfied with how the video looked, and I feel that most people buying their first action cam, who this camera seems to be kind of targeted at, will be more than pleased with how this video looks. However, there are some minor flaws in the video quality that stand out at 4K. Most notably purple fringing that halos around bright objects, like these tree branches here, or disgusting lens flares that show up when you point at the sun, or even when the sun is just out of frame. So I'm guessing that sacrifices were made in terms of lens quality in order to hit a low price point. 1080p 60 it's unfortunate how bad this is. It's the complete opposite beast of the 4K. Colors are still good, but resolution wise, 1080p 60 and 2K 60 look almost identical, so this applies to both of them. They both look awful. They're blocky, details get lost in this crunchy contrast that sort of turns details into circular blobs. This comes paired with pretty aggressive anti-noise smoothing and makes the video look bad, especially compared to other cameras' 1080p's or other cameras' 2K 60s or any of them. I would highly recommend sticking to 4K. So for example, here is the same shot of the garden in 4K. Look at how extreme that difference is. It seems like many action cam makers these days neglect 1080p in favor of perfecting 4K, and it really shows where Akaso's efforts went into with this firmware. Side by side with the SJ8 Pro, both filming at 2K 60, you can really see the difference in things like the blades of grass or details on the trees. So let's go back to what is another positive note, or mostly another positive note, image stabilization. Image stabilization on this camera is something else, especially in the right circumstances. Walking or running or doing anything that's in a straight line, this camera is nearly gimbal smooth, even outperforming more expensive cameras from other Chinese brands such as the SJ8 Pro. No, it's not hyper smooth or whatever DJI or GoPro are calling it, but it is pretty damn close, and that is astounding for a camera at the $100 price point. Look at this side by side, for example, with the V50X and the SJ8 Pro, a camera that costs almost twice as much. You might notice immediately that the V50X is a lot closer up than the SJ8 Pro, and to be honest, I don't mind that. It results in lower distortion from fisheye and a bit more focus on the action. But the point of this is the SJ8 Pro stabilization doesn't keep up to the V50X when you're going on flat ground like this. Where the V50X starts to kind of fall apart is when it comes to cornering. The V50X is so aggressive about trying to maintain the video centering that if you turn too quickly, the stabilization freaks out and doesn't know what to do. It begins to jump and stutter, which compared to the SJ8 Pro, again, it's not as smooth when going straight, but that camera actually corners smoothly. I'd recommend turning off the image stabilization at night as well, as it causes a bit of fuzz when the shutter speed gets slower. The stabilization qualities make the V50X seem like it is suited for vlogging or walk and talk video, but now we come to the biggest downside of the V50X, its microphone. And to be honest, I am so disappointed in this. Although Akaso says that the camera does support an external mic, at the time of writing this review, one is not yet available, and I couldn't get my other micro USB mic to work with it. The built-in microphone on the camera sounds something like this.
Yeah, this is what it sounds like as I'm riding, and you probably can't even hear me because the microphone on this camera is not very loud at all. If I boost the audio in post though, this is what it sounds like. Maybe a little bit better. Maybe. There's no option on the camera either to boost the audio. Any audio editing that you do would have to be done in post-production. Alright, and 4K 30 frames per second. Same sort of thing, just testing the synchronization of the audio. The unfortunate part of this is you're probably not going to be able to hear me because the microphone on this camera is utter garbage. It is so quiet, muffled. Well, I guess it's about similar to most of the real low-end action cameras like the $30, $40, $50 ones.
It's extremely muffled and lacks clarity and is just not usable. Even here, if I increase the volume in post-production so you can actually understand me, you'll hear what I mean in terms of lacking clarity. It's just not good. It's extremely disappointing because otherwise this camera would be so good for vlogging. So what can you do to fix the really poor quality microphone? Well, I think the only thing that you really can do is use an external recorder, which isn't always possible, especially when you're getting into more rugged, muddy, wet situations. Night and low light video is a little bit grainy with quite high noise suppression. But that being said, I was surprised with how usable it actually is, especially with the image stabilization turned off. The first shot here has it on, and you can see how everything kind of gets fuzzy periodically, since the stabilization is trying to compensate for that slow shutter speed. However, turn the EIS off, and the video looks shockingly good. Sharp, bright enough under street lighting, and you can kind of see what's going on. You can see signs, you can read some text, and even still photos in low light end up sharp, which is something most action cams I test absolutely struggle with. Photos overall from this camera are actually very good. Color is accurate, they have lots of detail, and I think that this is one of the better action cams for stills in the budget category. There is still a little bit of shutter delay. When you click the button it takes about half a second to take the photo, but I'd say that's less than average at this price point. So overall, do I recommend buying the V50X? Maybe. I know that's not a good answer, but here's why I'm saying maybe. It is a solid starter camera that does have some flaws, and some of those flaws may be deal breakers for you. If you don't care about the microphone quality and you don't plan to use 1080p, then this is one of the better cheap cameras I've tested, especially if you are a walk and talk vlogger and you'd use it with an external mic. How about compared to the other Akaso cameras? Well, I'd get the V50X over the V50 Elite. Despite the Elite being a very good camera overall, the only advantage it has over the X is a better microphone, and that's just not enough to justify spending more money. I would recommend the V50 Pro, however, out of all three of these cameras, despite it not having buttons, because the V50 Pro has sharper video and a much better mic. It's unfortunate, but there still isn't a no compromise camera under $100. And when that does come around, I'll let you know, and I'll tell you to buy it. Right now, well, it's really up to you and your priorities. Thanks for watching. Like, share, subscribe, etc. All of your love is appreciated.